podcast. I hope it comes through. Let's get it on. Triumph of the spirit. Get into the swing of things. Round 18 at the Lakes at Mount Edgecombe, and the 21st of February 2019. We are into the new year, the new season. The golf experiment is now on round 18. We're nearing our 20 round mark. The experiment started very early in December, and it's been really a lot of data that's been gathered in the course decision, the course management, also the time spent on practicing certain elements. What's going to happen is after 20 rounds, the podcast of the actual rounds, I'm going to give it a break. You can definitely follow some of the other shows that I'm going to go into. Going to go into some very alternative topics. So at the end of the day, it would be almost like an experiment where you have a washout period, and then I would like to actually start those next 20 rounds, possibly either in identical conditions, and have a complete sequence that I can compare it to as a benchmark. That would be the right thing. And I hope I'm sounding better as I try and keep the podcast quite structured, and it has obviously a good flow to it. I find the podcasts are very impromptu, testing me in many avenues in terms of, have I actually prepared something in a very logical way to communicate, or should I just let it naturally come out, and then people will find that there's quite a lot of information to take in and they don't have enough time to maybe digest it if they're busy with something. But I think it's getting into a much clearer and more defined path, especially with the way in which this process has enabled me to focus on particular avenues of the game. I would like to discuss, obviously, this round 18 in its singular, but I have collected the data, and it's an experiment, not just from a reflection point of view. I have actually taken down some of the scores and how the scoring actually reflects from a statistical point of view, and I feel like that is happening in the background as I'm sort of reflecting on the round, also from a commentary point of view. But I just find that the golf, it does come down to a behavior that you have to be very disciplined to follow. I think what happens with me out there on the course is there's nuances, and there are a lot of habits that I'm pretty much taking on that is obviously a test on its own. So it's not just about self-examining your expectation levels all the time, but it's also, there is a learning curve that is in play, and from time to time I'm going to have to be very mindful of the fact that I could easily be frustrated and get emotional with knowing consciously that there's something that I am doing out of my will, and might not be comprehending it the way in which I'm doing this post-round reflection. So I'd like to talk about the 21st of February. It was round 18 on the Lakes. I always enjoy playing Mount Edgecombe, and on a Thursday afternoon it is a pleasure to play with good company, and then it's also a working day, so you're taking a bit of time off from the office. But I arrive at the course obviously in a routine manner, so the whole checking in process, get that all done so that you know that you have some organization and you know where things are, not just from your clubs that you've selected on the day. I mean, I am tinkering with leaving a 3-iron out and a 4-iron out because I want to have the extra wedge. So, those are the kind of decisions I'm making sort of an hour before the round, and that decision can actually happen when I know that I've been hitting the driver or the 3-wood very well in the last 3 or 4 rounds. But I think at the end of the day, the wind makes the course play a little bit longer, and I hadn't really made a decision which tee I was going to play off. So playing off the white tees was the decision that was made, maybe influenced because it's a Lions format. But once again, these are all tests mentally that you take in your stride, because you should be playing the game that gets you to score irrespective of how it combines with the team score. I mean, trying to be aggressive on certain shots is probably not in my nature, and that's the test. So I'm going to just go through the scoring maybe a bit differently to the other episodes. I feel that it's very descriptive to describe the ball flight and how I felt the rating of the stroke was for my decision. But I think at the end of the day, just putting in what the actual stat was per shot. So it was a start off the 10th. So you arrive obviously at that par 4, which is no more temporary greens. So we have a proper length, playing off the white tee, a par 4 that will obviously measure 365 meters to the center of the green. So if you are going to be hitting a driver, which was recommended, it felt like there was a 2-club wind hitting me in my face. You have a blind tee shot, because the hole is sitting. It's sitting on a dogleg left, so you have to avoid the bunkers that line the fairway on the left, and then there's a whole bunch of trouble on the right if you decide to block the driver out. So at the end of the day, there is a marker that's in the center of the fairway. Very hard to even reach the marker, but I hit pretty much a 7 out of 10 type of drive. I felt like I did block it a little bit right of the target, but I had the slope and I had the fairway to work with, so I finished very well positioned with approximately 123 meters to the center of the green. And I decided in the end that because of the wind, I wasn't going to be short with a gap wedge. So I decided to just take a setup with the ball slightly above my feet. I took a pitching wedge and decided to hit an approach that was not going to be going for the flag. I went for the center of the green, and I found the green well. So now I've hit a fairway and I've hit a green on my first hole of Thursday afternoon. So I should be feeling that I'm at least constructing a round, in the right way. I haven't really played outside of myself. I've played within, and I've now got an outside chance of birdie because the greens are actually rolling really well with the Synode and Royal Blue Glass, and I had more than 20 foot, unfortunately, to try and make that outside birdie. So the ball moved a good 3-4 cups left to right. So I did actually give it a good chance, and I found myself sort of inside 5 or 6 foot to save the par. So two putts on the first green, and it was 2 putts obviously with a green in regulation. Now on hole number 11, it is a difficult tee shot. You also have a blind. You can't really see the hole from the tee, but it's a dog leg to the right. There's a whole bunch of trouble on the left, and there's a whole bunch of trouble on the right. No hazards, but just indigenous bush. You can easily lose the ball, and I generally pick a target that is just left of center of the fairway, and I choose driver. And once again, I hit a very good 8 out of 10 swing speed, and I rated just a little bit right of the target line to be in a very good position to maybe contemplate a wedge or a 9-iron. So the pin on the 11th hole is actually right back. It's about 27, 28 paces on, and I'm now looking at a distance to the pin of around 134, 145, 135, 136 meters. So I know that it's an elevated shot, and I know that if I just take maybe a pitching wedge, then I can't go long. So I've decided to hit the pitching wedge, and I am sort of on the first cut and not on the fairway, but I still count it as a fairway. So I need to find the green, and I actually miss the green short, and I've now got a very difficult bunker sand save, especially with the amount of green that I have to work with, but also not just, it's also the uphill lie of the bunker, and the bunkers do play quite firm, not always a lot of sand to work with, and I really just hits the sand save a little bit fat, so I've actually got a very long outside par save. I actually take the Jordan Spieth method of putting a medium to long distance, because it's definitely 35-40 feet of right to left that I have to contend with, but I really do hit a very firm putt that just gives me about also inside 5 foot to make a 5 on the 11th. So that is 2 putts on the green, but it's not a green in regulation. I am 1 over now after 2 holes. I go to the 12th, which is playing very short, because the wind now feels like it's coming off our right shoulder, and the actual distance from the white tee markers are giving me 147 meters to the pin, which is located quite sort of 2/3 to the left of this green. So it's actually very much a very difficult tee shot if you leave it short. I think the right thing that I was thinking of was just go for the center of the green, just try and get the distance right. It did turn out to be a wedge rather than a 9, so I've hit the 9 long, and obviously don't really have the bunkers that's around the green as a problem, but I've got a problem that I've got a little bit of a rough that I'm going to have to hit a chip, using all the, I've got enough green to work with, but I've got myself a decision where it's probably not going to be a chip with the wedge, but it's going to be maybe a chip with a 9 iron, because I've got a whole bunch of slope that I have to deal with. I decided to hit the 9 iron. I must have looked up a little bit too soon. I didn't complete the swing in the transition and the follow through, and I actually duffed that chip just to find sort of myself just on the green, and now I'm in 3-putt territory, because you could easily hit the putt and it could ride the slope and and you could miss the putt coming back. So unfortunately it's a 3-putt in the first 3 holes of the day. I think I'm a little bit sort of emotional at this point. I'm not really controlling my anger, because I obviously have high expectations with the putting, and now I've sort of haven't really given myself any chances with holding out with the way that I'm addressing the putts. So I am 3 over after 3 holes, and now the 13th, which is a very narrow shoot of a downhill par 4. Not playing that long. The play here is to hit a 5 iron, but all of my playing partners actually had trouble off the tee. The wind was screaming off the left into us, so it's a target that's probably more left of centre of fairway, and I decide to hit a hybrid, because I've got a feeling that I'll hit a decent length, and then it will feed off the slope and find itself at least a gap wedge or a pitching wedge in. And I've hit this hybrid a little bit flush, and it's got a little bit of a draw on it. So now I've actually gone too long, and I've got problems, because I'm going to find the ball and it's going to be unplayable, and then I've still got to get it out of where I found it, so it's not a lost ball. And I've taken 2 shots to get myself back to the fairway, and I'm looking at double bogey for back-to-back consecutive double drops. So I'm 5 over after 4 holes. I've now got myself set up on the 14th, which has a beautiful Pawnee Lake that separates me from the 9th. That's on the opposite side. It both heads towards the sort of halfway house that has a very, very visual